She was lost at sea. The billionaire saved her life and changed his forever. Part 2. Chapter 7, Arrival in Paradise. Morning sunlight spilled into Claire's villa, filtered through gauzy curtains that danced in the ocean breeze. She awoke to the lull of water beneath the bungalow and the gentle rustle of palms beyond the windows. It was hard to reconcile such peace with the terror she'd endured just days before. She dressed in a soft cream sundress left by the resort staff, simple, elegant, a size too perfect to be coincidence. And when she emerged onto the veranda, blinking against the brilliance of the morning, Victor was already waiting for her. He stood barefoot on the sand, leaning casually against one of the palm trunks. His shirt was crisp white today, his sleeves rolled once, forearms bronzed and strong. He looked like he belonged to the sun. "I was going to let you sleep," he said as she approached. "But the concierge said they've arranged everything for us." Claire raised a brow. "Arranged what?" Victor gestured toward a waiting resort buggy just behind the palms. "We're going shopping." She blinked. "Shopping? Here?" He nodded. The resort has partnerships with several luxury boutiques, Prada, Balmain, Valentino, Cartier. Small collections flown in for private guests. "You don't have anything but the clothes you were rescued in, Claire." "Let me fix that." Claire's brow creased. "Victor, I can't just accept." "You can," he said, his voice gentle but immovable. "You lost everything. This isn't charity, it's practicality." She folded her arms, torn between pride and the undeniable truth, she did need clothes. "But designer boutiques? I could get by with something simple," she said carefully. "Flip-flops and a sarong." Victor's smile was faint, amused. "You survived a shipwreck. You deserve more than flip-flops." Before she could protest again, he added, "I won't argue. Just trust me for one day. If anything feels wrong, you tell me, and we stop." Claire sighed. "Fine. But I'm picking my own shoes." He grinned. "Deal." The buggy whisked them through a maze of white sand paths and lush green gardens. It was like driving through a dream. Claire had seen images of places like this, screensavers, travel blogs, glossy brochures, but being in it felt surreal. Every palm-framed path led to another perfect cove, another infinity pool, another discreet villa tucked behind flowering vines. The boutique sat beside the spa, half hidden behind frosted glass doors etched with gold script. Inside, the space smelled of vanilla, leather, and jasmine. It wasn't a typical store, it felt like a gallery. Racks of floating silk gowns and tailored resort wear gleamed beneath soft lighting. Shelves lined with designer shoes and leather handbags were arranged like exhibits. Claire stepped inside hesitantly, feeling awkward in the borrowed linen clothes. A boutique assistant greeted them with a polite nod and glanced once at Victor, recognizing him immediately. "This is Miss Wallace," Victor said to the assistant. "She's here to find a new wardrobe. Day wear, resort wear, evening options, and accessories." "Of course, Mr. Ambrose," the assistant replied. "We'll make sure everything is arranged." Claire turned to Victor, stunned. "Evening options? In case we dine somewhere nice." "We're already in somewhere nice," she muttered. But she followed the assistant deeper into the boutique, where clothes in shades of coral, ivory, sapphire, and jade awaited. She ran her hands over soft silk, cotton, and chiffon. Every piece was effortless, elegant, fabrics that whispered against the skin, colors that caught the light. For a while, Claire simply let herself be guided. She tried on wide-legged white linen pants with a belted Dior blouse, a floaty etro sundress with golden thread, and a rich emerald green slip dress that fit like it was designed for her. Each time she stepped out, Victor was waiting in a sleek armchair, watching her with that unreadable gaze. He didn't say much. But the way his eyes lingered, slow and reverent, made her feel more seen than any compliment. Eventually, she emerged in a pale blue wrap dress, delicate and simple, the kind of thing one might wear barefoot on a beach at dusk. She stood there awkwardly, smoothing the fabric. "This one's actually perfect." Victor rose and walked toward her, his eyes not leaving hers. "Then we'll take it." She turned, flustered. "You haven't even seen the price." "I don't care." "I do." He reached into his pocket and handed her a card. Not a credit card, just a slim black key card with gold lettering. "The room's already covered. So is the wardrobe. Anything you need while you're here, you use that." Claire stared at it. "This is too much." "It's not enough," he said quietly. "You deserve to feel whole again, Claire. Let me help." She held the card tightly, her heart caught somewhere between gratitude and something far more dangerous, longing. Later, they walked the beach in silence. Claire carried a small shopping bag with a single new pair of sandals. Victor had insisted she get more, but she'd compromised, choosing only what she needed, and one small indulgence, a pair of gold earrings shaped like crescent moons. They paused near the water's edge, their feet sinking into cool, wet sand. The air smelled like salt and mango, and the sky was starting to blush with evening. "I've never had anyone take care of me like this," Claire said softly. Victor glanced at her. "Get used to it." She met his gaze and smiled faintly. "Is that your way of saying you're not done with me yet?" "I haven't even started," he said again, echoing the words from the night before. This time, her breath caught. And she believed him. Not because he was wealthy. Not because he'd saved her. But because when he looked at her, she didn't feel like a charity case or a project. She felt like something rare. Something chosen. And for the first time since she set foot on the doomed yacht days ago, Claire allowed herself to wonder what it would mean to stop surviving. And start living again. Chapter 8, Dresses and Diamonds. The next morning arrived like a dream Claire had accidentally stepped into. Soft ocean light filtered through white linen curtains, and the scent of fresh orchids filled the villa. Somewhere in the distance, the ocean whispered, patient and persistent. Claire padded barefoot across the polished teak floors, still dressed in the pale blue wrap dress from the day before. It had become symbolic already, her first true belonging since the wreck. She should have felt spoiled, or overwhelmed. Instead, she felt something more complicated. Uneasy. Not because she wasn't grateful. But because this life Victor offered, this endless ribbon of opulence, simplicity, and silence, it wasn't hers. It felt borrowed. Like trying on a persona she hadn't earned. She found him on the main deck of the resort's guest-only beach lounge, sitting at a wide teak table shaded by palm fronds. He was reading from a tablet, a plate of sliced mango and espresso beside him. Even at rest, Victor carried the poise of someone used to being obeyed. And yet when he saw her approach, his entire focus shifted, as if she were the only thing in the world he wanted to be distracted by. "You're awake," he said. Claire sat opposite him and nodded. "Barely. I figured I'd let you sleep." "You've had a week." She gave a half smile. Understatement. Victor pushed a second coffee her way, rich and steaming. We have plans today. She raised an eyebrow. More shopping. He chuckled. Only if you want to finish what you started. Yesterday was necessity. Today, indulgence. Claire tilted her head, wary. I'm not sure I'm the indulging type. Then let's test that theory. 2 hours later, Claire stood in the middle of an exclusive private showroom just off the resort's central pavilion. Unlike the boutique from the day before, this one felt more like stepping into a high-security art vault. Behind tempered glass were rows of designer accessories, handbags, scarves, and belts from heritage labels. Jewelry displays glimmered beneath protective spotlights. And standing at the center, flanked by stylists and a soft-spoken personal shopper, Claire felt dizzy. She tried on a silk wrap dress in a rich ochre hue, trimmed in gold stitching. Then another, deep garnet red, sleeveless, with a slit that made her legs look impossibly long. Each time she stepped out of the changing room, Victor's eyes followed her. He never said much, just watched with unnerving focus, offering a single nod or murmured that one. Eventually, she stood before a full-length mirror, barefoot, in an ivory dress that shimmered faintly like pearls in sunlight. It clung at the waist and fell softly down her legs, brushing just above the floor. The stylist added a delicate gold chain with a diamond pendant that landed at the hollow of her throat. Claire stared at herself. She didn't look like a woman rescued from the sea. She looked like someone who belonged on red carpets or private yachts, someone who existed in the orbit of men like Victor Ambrose. Which was exactly what frightened her. She stepped out quickly, pulling at the dress's hem. This is too much. Victor, seated nearby, glanced up from his espresso. It fits. That's not what I mean. He set the cup down and studied her. You don't like it. It's not about liking it, she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. It's about what it means to accept it. Victor stood, slow and quiet, and walked toward her. The stylists stepped back, instinctively recognizing something private in the moment. He stopped just a foot in front of her, his voice low. Claire, this isn't a performance. I'm not dressing you up to play some part. Then what is this? She asked, gesturing toward the room. This, he said, is me giving you the freedom to feel good in your own skin again. After everything you've been through, you shouldn't be left with borrowed clothes and survival guilt. You should remember what it feels like to live. To stand in front of a mirror and see a woman who's allowed to feel beautiful. Claire swallowed, overwhelmed. But why go so far? Why do this for me? His gaze didn't waver. Because I want to. And because somewhere between saving you and watching you walk into my life barefoot, I stopped seeing this as temporary. Her breath hitched. He wasn't just dressing her. He was claiming something, emotionally, wordlessly. And part of her wanted to resist. Wanted to say no, to protect herself from the gravity of what was happening. But another part, the part still shaken by the nearness of death, the loss of everything, the weight of survival, wanted to give in. Just for a moment. Claire looked down at the dress. Then at the necklace. She could always give it back later. Okay, she whispered. That night, they dined at a restaurant that floated on stilts above the lagoon. Lanterns swayed in the wind, throwing golden light across the water. The waiter barely glanced at the menu before murmuring that Mr. Ambrose's table had been prepared, the chef already notified. Claire wore the ivory gown. The diamond necklace. And her new gold sandals. Victor had changed into a black button-up and dark grey trousers. Understated, but sharp enough that heads turned when he entered the room. He didn't seem to notice the attention, his gaze was only for her. As they ate, the conversation grew quieter. No more talk of work or survival or storms. They spoke instead of childhood dreams, of books they remembered from school, of places they wanted to visit but never had. The air between them grew warmer, denser. After dinner, they walked back to her villa in silence. Victor didn't ask to stay. He simply reached for her hand as they walked along the sand. And Claire let him. That night, lying beneath a canopy of white cotton sheets, she stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly above her. Her fingers still tingled from where he had held her hand. It wasn't love. Not yet. But something was happening. Something inevitable. Chapter 9, A Luxurious Affair. It began with a kiss. Not the kind that came with hesitation or apology, but one laced with quiet inevitability, the slow burn of days spent circling around something neither of them had dared to name. It happened on the third night. After dinner, they had walked the beach again, the moon hanging low over the sea like a luminous guardian. Claire had worn a silk navy slip dress, one of the few she had finally allowed herself to keep from the boutique. It shimmered like ink under starlight, skimming her bare shoulders. She'd braided her hair loosely, her skin still sun-warmed and tinged with salt air. Victor had looked at her as though she were a vision he'd summoned from the sea. They didn't speak much that night. They didn't need to. The tension had stretched between them for days, unspoken, magnetic, heavy with every almost touch and lingering glance. From the moment she had stepped onto the Celestia to now, every hour together had pulled them closer. Not with dramatic declarations, but with the gravity of shared survival and something even deeper, connection. When they reached her villa, he walked her to the door. She turned to thank him, again, but the words caught in her throat. Because he was looking at her the way he had on the yacht. The way he had in the boutique. Like he wanted her, but more than that, like he respected her. Like she wasn't a woman to be possessed, but one to be chosen, invited. His fingers reached for hers, grazing lightly. She didn't pull back. And when he leaned in, slow and deliberate, she met him halfway. The kiss was warm. Slow. Intentional. His lips were soft but firm, his hands careful, patient, as though memorizing her without urgency. It was not a kiss of conquest. It was a kiss of permission. And when she pulled him inside, there was no hesitation. The days that followed blurred into golden indulgence and intimate discovery. In the mornings, Claire awoke in Victor's arms, tangled in sheets of Egyptian cotton, the scent of the sea lingering on their skin. He was different in these private hours, quieter, even tender. He would press his lips to her bare shoulder before rising, murmur something low in French, and disappear to make coffee. In the afternoons, they explored the island together. Private snorkeling excursions, sunset paddleboarding across coral reefs, picnics under thatched pavilions with chilled wine and exotic fruit platters. Every meal was an event, lobster linguine by candlelight, champagne brunch on floating trays in the infinity pool, tropical cocktails served in coconuts carved with their initials. And through it all, Claire slowly let go of the walls she'd built over years of independence, routine, and guarded caution. She found herself laughing again, really laughing, at Victor's surprisingly dry sense of humor, or the way he pretended to hate being barefoot but secretly loved it. He, in turn, listened to her, really listened, when she talked about her life in New York, her job, her dreams of one day running her own creative agency. "You're the kind of person who builds things," he said one night as they lay on a sun-warmed hammock strung between two palms. "I admire that." She turned her head toward him, surprised. "Says the man who owns half the shipping lines in the world." He smiled, brushing her knuckles with his thumb. "I build things because I have to. You build because you believe in something." It was during that week that Claire understood, Victor wasn't just a billionaire with a yacht and a penthouse full of tailored suits. He was a man who had everything, and still craved connection. And somehow, she had become the one person he let see him. One evening, after a spa session that left her skin glowing and her limbs boneless, Claire stepped into the dressing suite of her villa to find a note left on her vanity in Victor's handwriting. "Dinner under the stars. Wear the white one. Meet me at the water's edge by 8. The white one." She smiled as she reached for the dress, a floor-length silk gown with an open back and barely there straps. It was the most exquisite thing she'd ever worn. She paired it with the diamond pendant he had insisted she keep, then let her hair fall in loose waves down her shoulders. When she reached the beach, the world fell away. A private table had been set beneath a canopy of fairy lights strung between bamboo poles. Candles flickered in the breeze. A string quartet played soft classical music just out of view. And Victor stood waiting, holding a flute of champagne, dressed in tailored navy, a subtle cologne drifting on the air between them. His eyes met hers and didn't waver. "You look like the reason stars were invented," he said simply. She laughed, soft, disbelieving. "You're dangerous when you say things like that. And yet you're still here." She stepped forward, took the glass from his hand, and touched it to his. "To unexpected detours." He lifted his glass. "To the ones that matter." They dined for hours, talked about everything and nothing. The food was flawless, the night endless. And when he pulled her to her feet for a slow dance in the sand, Claire pressed her cheek to his chest and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Not just gratitude. Not just attraction. But the echo of something deeper. Something terrifying. Something like love. They spent the night together again. And the next. And the next. Their days became an intimate ritual, their bodies memorizing each other's rhythms, their laughter echoing through the villa walls, their whispered conversations folding into the ocean breeze. The affair was brief, yes. But it was blinding in its intensity. And somewhere deep inside, Claire began to sense the truth: this wouldn't last. Because the real world, the other world, was waiting. Her return flight. Her job. Her life in New York. All the pieces she had carefully rebuilt before she ever knew Victor Ambrose. Chapter 10, Goodbye, Maldives. The day arrived sooner than Claire had expected, or maybe it had simply crept up on her while she wasn't watching. Either way, when she awoke that morning, the sound of the ocean no longer felt like an escape. It sounded like a countdown. She lay in bed, wrapped in the warmth of linen sheets and Victor's quiet breathing beside her. His arm was draped over her waist, his hand splayed across her stomach as if he were still anchoring her to the present. The light filtering through the villa's glass doors had shifted, softer now, more golden. It was the kind of light that told you it was time to move on. Her flight was in the afternoon. The hotel had reconfirmed it the night before. The harbors were clear. Her passport had been reissued and delivered with apologetic smiles from embassy staff and hotel management alike. Her luggage, entirely new, sat neatly packed at the edge of the villa, the tags already printed and waiting. Everything was in order. Except her heart. Victor stirred behind her, his lips brushing against her shoulder in a familiar pattern. She closed her eyes as he kissed her softly once, twice, before his voice reached her. "Are you awake?" She nodded. "Yeah." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Today." She turned in his arms to face him, their noses just inches apart. "Today." They stared at each other in the silence that followed. No protest. No drama. Just the weight of inevitability resting between them like a third presence in the bed. "Come have breakfast," he said finally. They ate in the open-air terrace of the villa, the table set simply but beautifully, mango slices, buttered toast, passion fruit jam, espresso. Claire wore a pale yellow dress, one of her favorites from the boutique, and she tried not to think about how it would soon be folded into a suitcase and returned to a life that felt a million miles away. Victor didn't speak much as they ate. He watched her closely, as though memorizing the curve of her hands, the way her hair moved in the breeze. She felt it, every glance, every quiet moment. She felt the pull just as strongly as she had that first night in the storm. But now, that pull was laced with goodbye. When breakfast was over, she stood and walked toward the beach. He followed, barefoot in linen trousers, his hands in his pockets. They stood in the shallow surf as waves curled around their ankles, the horizon stretching ahead. "You could stay," he said softly. She looked at him. "You know I can't." "You could change your flight." "I have a job, Victor. A life. People who expect me back." He nodded slowly. "Right. Your company. Your clients. Your schedule." "Don't do that." "I'm not," he said gently. "I'm just trying to find a reason to ask you to stay without making you feel like you have to say no." Claire looked away, her throat tight. This was never supposed to be forever. "No," he agreed. "But it could have been something more." "It was something more," she whispered. They stood in silence as the wind rustled the fronds and the sea pulled gently at their feet. "I won't forget this," she said. "You better not," he replied, a rare smile ghosting across his lips. "I've set the bar pretty high." She laughed, and it was like something loosened in her chest. A relief, even in the pain. When the time came, he walked her to the dock himself. The yacht was gone, returned to a nearby port. The hotel had arranged a private speedboat to take her to the regional airport. From there, a seaplane would carry her back to Mail. Then, a long flight to New York. Victor helped load her suitcase and stood beside her as she waited. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Then don't say anything," he said. "Just promise me something." "Anything. When you wake up in the middle of the night and wonder if this was real, if any of it happened, don't question it. Don't erase it just because it didn't last." Claire looked up, tears blurring the ocean behind him. "I won't." He leaned in and kissed her, not rushed or desperate. Just long enough to stay with her. Long enough to be remembered. And then, with her heart in her throat, she stepped into the boat. She didn't look back until they were far enough that his form was just a dark shape on the dock. Still standing. Still watching. Still there. The flight home was a haze. She watched the ocean disappear beneath the clouds, watched the jewel-toned islands fade into smudges of green and gold. She kept the diamond necklace hidden beneath her shirt, fingers brushing it absent-mindedly as she stared out the window. She didn't cry, not until she walked into her New York apartment and set her suitcase down. There, surrounded by silence and concrete and the ghost of her old life, she let herself collapse. The affair was over. Victor Ambrose was on the other side of the world. And she was alone. Or so she thought. Chapter 11, Life Resumes. Claire Wallace returned to New York with a suitcase full of luxury, a phone full of missed emails, and a heart that no longer felt like her own. The city greeted her with the indifference it was known for, cold wind funneling through gray avenues, taxis honking, people brushing past each other with zero intention of making eye contact. After the golden light of the Maldives, the skyline seemed dull, like someone had dimmed the world's contrast. Her apartment was exactly as she had left it, clean, orderly, lifeless. The air smelled faintly of lavender and fabric softener. Her plants had survived, thanks to the neighbor with a green thumb. Everything was intact. Everything except her. She unpacked slowly, folding the gowns and silk tops she had worn in paradise as if they were relics from another lifetime. She didn't know where to put them, those were not New York clothes. They didn't belong in the office or on the subway or in her Monday morning coffee meetings. They belonged to a different version of her. One who was still barefoot on warm white sand. One who had danced under starlight with a man who made the world feel smaller when he looked at her. Victor. She hadn't heard from him. Not since she left. No calls. No messages. No letters sent through resort staff or sudden appearances in boardrooms or grand romantic gestures at airport terminals. Just silence. It was what they had agreed upon. They had both known it was temporary. A pocket of heat and heart suspended between two storms. But the silence still ached. Her first day back at work hit like a train. The digital campaigns she'd left mid-cycle were waiting like neglected children. Her assistant had done her best to keep things moving, but Claire could sense the strain. Emails. Meetings. Slack pings. Zoom calls. Deadlines that didn't care about soul-searching or personal epiphanies. Claire, can we jump on a quick call? The West Coast client's not happy with the ROI projections. Claire, the new landing page mock-ups are stuck in legal. Can you escalate? Claire, did you see that TikTok thread about the product's glitch? It's going viral. We need a response strategy in place by this afternoon. She was back. Wholly, painfully back. And yet, not. There was a stillness inside her now, something that hadn't existed before Victor. A quiet resistance to the frantic pace, as though part of her was still floating in that deep blue sea, watching the rest of the world scramble. She made it through the first week on autopilot. Coffee by 7. Subway by 8. Desk by 9. Home by 6. A glass of wine. Shower. Sleep. Repeat. Everyone welcomed her with tired smiles. No one noticed that something was different. Except Claire. It happened in the second week. She'd felt off for a few days, light-headed, easily winded, a strange tenderness in her chest. She chalked it up to travel fatigue, to adjusting back to city life, to jet lag and office stress and emotional whiplash. But when she skipped breakfast and felt a wave of nausea roll through her during a strategy call, she paused. Something wasn't right. That evening, she sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the white stick in her hands. The silence of her bathroom pressed in around her. 2 pink lines. Clear. Unmistakable. Claire didn't breathe. Didn't blink. She read the directions again. Then again. Then checked the expiration date. Still 2 lines. She was pregnant. She dropped the test into the sink with a clatter and stood, gripping the counter like it might vanish beneath her hands. No. No. This wasn't supposed to happen. She paced. Then she sat down. Then she wept. Because of course, she already knew. Somewhere deep in her body, in the places that remembered him without trying, she'd known. The late nights in the Maldives, wrapped in silk sheets and one another's arms. The carelessness. The passion. The impossible intimacy of it all. Victor. This was his child. Her heart beat louder than the city outside. But as quickly as the realization formed, so did the fear. She couldn't tell him. Not now. What would he think? That she'd tricked him. That it had all been some elaborate plan. She could already hear it in her own head: gold digger, trap, opportunist. She didn't want that. She couldn't bear to see those thoughts flicker in his eyes, even for a second. She pressed a hand to her stomach. A boy. A girl. It didn't matter. What mattered was the fragile seed of life growing inside her, a piece of paradise she had unknowingly carried back to New York. She made her decision that night. She would keep the baby. But she would do it alone. No matter how hard it would be. No matter how much it hurt. Victor Ambrose would never know. Chapter 12, The Unexpected. Winter came to New York with little warning. The sharp wind off the Hudson River slipped between buildings and beneath coats, and the sidewalks turned a dull slate gray, wet with slush and old leaves. But inside Claire Wallace's apartment, something quiet and radiant began to take root. She was pregnant. And she was alone. She hadn't told anyone. Not yet. Not even her closest friend Mia, who had a knack for sensing when Claire was hiding something. Claire couldn't bring herself to say it out loud, not while the truth still felt so raw. Saying it would make it too real, like opening a door to a life she hadn't planned. Still, she began preparing in silence. At first, it was subtle, switching to herbal tea instead of her usual espresso, avoiding sushi during work lunches, trading heels for low boots. She bought a book about single motherhood and kept it hidden inside a manila folder at work. At night, she lay in bed and whispered her fears into the dark, placing a hand over the gentle swell that had started to form just below her navel. She hadn't contacted Victor. She told herself every day that she had made the right decision. He was too powerful. Too far away. Too used to women trying to use him. She could already imagine the conversation, his hesitation, the questions, the inevitable silence. And worse, what if he didn't believe her? Or what if he did, but resented her for it? No. She wouldn't let her child grow up feeling unwanted. Not by him. Not by anyone. She would protect this little life with everything she had. By the time she reached her second trimester, the fear had dulled into determination. Claire moved through the weeks with purpose. She found a new OBGYN, updated her health insurance, and even began researching prenatal yoga classes in the neighborhood. She created a budget, switched to part-time consulting work from home, and started reworking her spare room into a nursery. Pale green paint. Floating bookshelves. A rocking chair in the corner. She chose not to find out the baby's gender. It felt right to let the future reveal itself in its own time. At her 20-week scan, she saw the baby for the first time in clear detail. The small profile, the curve of a tiny foot. A strong, steady heartbeat filled the exam room, rhythmic and urgent. Claire closed her eyes and let the sound sink into her bones. She was growing a person. A real person. Luke was born on a cold, bright day in March. There was a late snowstorm, the kind that blanketed the city in silence and slowed everything down. Claire lay bought alone, by choice, and held her son for the first time with tears streaming down her face. He was perfect. His hair was dark, his skin warm and soft, and his eyes, when they finally opened, were unmistakably Victor's. Storm grey. Focused. Soulful. She named him Luke Ambrose Wallace. Giving him Victor's name wasn't a declaration. It was a quiet acknowledgement of truth. No matter how far she kept her secrets, part of him would always live in their child. The first year was brutal. Claire barely slept. Feedings blurred into diaper changes and late-night lullabies hummed through cracked lips. She went days without makeup, weeks without a real conversation with anyone but her pediatrician. Her career paused. Her body changed. Her sense of identity shifted constantly: marketing executive, single mother, protector, anchor, warrior. And yet, she had never loved anything more than this tiny boy with his father's eyes and her stubborn chin. She took hundreds of photos of him: Luke sleeping on her chest, Luke grasping her finger, Luke smiling for the first time. She saved them all but never shared them online. A secret, still. Some nights, long after Luke had fallen asleep, she would sit on the living room floor with a glass of water in her hand and Victor's name on her lips, but never aloud. It lived inside her like a phantom ache. She didn't let herself Google him. Didn't look at articles. Didn't check financial news or social feeds. She had built a wall. A beautiful, bittersweet wall around her heart. And on the other side of it was a man who didn't know he had a son. By the time Luke turned 2, he was walking confidently, talking in sweet, jumbled sentences, and charming everyone he met. Claire enrolled him in a part-time Montessori playgroup, returned to consulting with a small firm, and found a rhythm that felt, if not easy, at least steady. Still, there were moments when the weight of it all hit her. When she took Luke to the park and saw other kids with 2 parents. When she came home from a long day and saw his eyes, wide and stormy like someone she used to dream about. When she wondered how long she could keep the truth hidden. But Claire reminded herself daily, she had made the best decision she could with the information she had. She had protected Luke. She had given him love, stability, safety. She had survived. And so had he. Until everything changed. It started with a fever. At first, she thought it was a cold. Luke had been to a birthday party and was fussy the next day. But the fever lingered. Then came the bruises, small, strange patches that didn't match any bumps or tumbles she remembered. He was sleeping more than usual. Whining. Losing color in his cheeks. Her gut twisted with dread. The doctor ordered blood work. Reassured her that children his age often caught viruses. But Claire saw the nurse's face when she gently pricked Luke's arm. Saw the careful way the pediatrician placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "We'll call you with the results as soon as we have them. It might take a few weeks. 3 weeks. 30 days. Claire nodded and took Luke home, holding his small, sleepy body against her chest like a shield. She didn't know what was wrong yet. But she knew something was coming. And deep inside, beneath the resolve and fear, a voice stirred again, one she hadn't heard in years. He deserves to know.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories. where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and wild theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and steamy romance, the next story is always one scandal away.